G'day friends and fans, welcome to Dave Talk Stuff. I'm your host, the author David Applegate. And feminists think that, right off the bat, they actually think, but they think, no. They're all little programmed NPCs, but their so-called cult, or whatever you want to call it, thinks it's a pseudo-religion, but it is politics with cult behaviour. But you've got to remember, right, what's one of the biggest cult behaviours, right?
You like eating red carpet, tough guy?
Yes!
Say you like eating red carpet!
I like eating red carpet!
Giggity.
Yeah. They have their obsessions, right? And of course...
Kids, the Royal Order of Sour Grapes for having a raisin for a brain.
But Madame Sour Grapes thinks that everything is fine, everything is dandy, that all the achievements of the last century have been nothing but a net benefit for society. We beg to differ. The Unexpected Effects of Feminism has dramatically impacted families, to such the extent that it is actually a net negative on society. You look at it, right? The domestic deficit, right? There is a decrease in record numbers of healthy children. Children are decreasingly in health. More children, not less, more children suffer abuse, and of course the majority are at the hands of women. It's why you don't hear about the stats anymore. More and more families are shifting their burden to pay other women, often of low economic status, to perform so-called traditional child taking roles. And of course these daycare centres, they're economically disadvantaged and become a net negative on society. Right? The more you tax someone to pay someone else, right, that money has to come from somewhere. Right, so you're robbing the productive to pay for the lifestyles of the privileged few who won't take responsibility for their actions because they desperately need that money as well to maintain their lifestyle because they don't want to scale back. Now, of course, there's the trivial shift. Women complain, right, that the majority of housework is unpaid, that they have higher stress and health implications. So they want you to pay them to take care of themselves because they don't have a man at home to help them. Right? So they work outside the home, work inside the home, and then childcare, and somehow that's all man's fault, right? See, that's the whole freedom from being unburdened come from, right? Breastfeeding challenges. As more women work, the actual duration and quality of breast milk goes down, which means children are not being transferred vital nutrients and vital immunity antigens, right? It's the same with non-vaginal birth. Those who don't go through vaginal birth don't have lower skin care, skin quality. They have lower health benefits. But of course, some women are so toxic that their vagina is a petri dish. But it's decreasing children's health, right? It's decreasing children's mental health, and it's decreasing children's physical health through harm from frustrated mothers and inattentive mothers. And it's then, of course, is the child abandonment, the child abuse. And of course, the last thing, of course, is the overall economic cost being shifted. So they are a net negative on children. But it gets worse. It always does. Now, of course, I am not an advocate of trans, but I've warned you for ages that the technology to replace women is easier than the technology to replace men. Men can, well, and this has been done allegedly 12 times, successfully, a womb transplantation. But increasingly they are working on artificial wombs as well. So women, you're out of business, right? Artificial insemination has been done for decades now with animals and successfully done with humans. Less successful than with animals, but yes. So, right, and of course, right, instead of infertile couples, these, increasingly it is trans who are going for this radical medical experimentation on humans, right? They're volunteering, so it's technically not a crime against humanity, even though it is exploiting the mentally ill. But still, one day, what would happen if the government said to you, right, you're retired, you're looking for money, you're increasingly stressed, then you have to ask yourself, what would happen if the government offered you 50 grand a year to be a mother? Right? Well, imagine motherhood, right? Mothers competing against men for motherhood, for money, because that's what they want. But of course, if you introduce money to the equation, how many trans men are going to be, I've had 12 surgeries, what's one more? Go for a artificial womb. Now, the shifts in marriage and fertility. It's called the delayed milestone. This is where the age of marriage for women has risen dramatically. And this is worldwide from 20 in the 1950s to 27, with a decline in birth rates. Right? And in fact, the birth rates have shifted from the teens to the over 30s, often, of course, with artificial means, whether it's artificial insemination or the increasingly chemical pregnancies or the implanted embryos. But despite all that, because of the high cost of treatment and the low success rate, it is economically unviable. Governments are looking for alternatives to deal with the declining birth rate. Now, the US isn't as bad as South Korea, but South Korea is looking to artificial wombs and paying men, not women, paying men to become mothers. Right? And I'm telling you right now, South Korea, it is going to come out soon that the president that was ousted was falsely ousted. The left deceived everyone, and it was backed by feminists within the establishment to oust, right? Anybody was a threat to the feminist establishment. But all or nothing, equality marriages are in decline, says feminists, and that the barrier is obviously men's inability to commit, and thus have created a further dismissal of feminism, as more and more people say, well, it's you, right? It's you. It's you. But this, again, society is...
Right turn, Clyde.
So what do you think of this prized peach?
Shut up!
Yeah. But the biggest impact is the rise of fatherlessness, which has led to, because thanks to no faults divorce, which has risen to the high numbers of single parent households and millions of fatherless children. They don't know their biological father. They are increasingly disconnected from society, right? They don't, social isolation, they're having to, because they don't have a stable home, right? More and more, right? You see this with criminality, right? Particularly in widespread single mother communities, the rise in criminality and the ideological backlash, where more and more women are trying to have it all, right? And on the other hand, and that's leading to burnout, but on the other hand, you have the rise of the trad wife, the women who are walking away from the system, right? Female lawyers cashing it all in to become mothers. Now, those are not making an impact yet. Right now, the rebellion against female dominance by women is low, but it is enough to polarize and panic the UN. And also with the economic shift, as more and more women aren't getting married, more and more women aren't getting that wealth transfer. So they are increasingly desperate to get that wealth transfer. So a lot of men just saying no, right? Right? So women are increasingly complaining. They've got periods, pregnancy, menopause. What do men have to deal with? All the above, right? You're always making your bodily functions someone else's problem, right? You're always looking for sympathy. You're always looking for you flip someone the bird, but when they punch you in the face, oh, you disrespect me. You don't respect me when you walk away. You don't respect my opinions when you tell them they're wrong. But you don't respect my opinions, so why should you care, right? You're going to lose every argument because there's no convincing them there's wrong, right? There's no logic or morality, right? No, what do you get from these women?
Kids, the Royal Order of Sour Grapes for having a raisin for a brain.
And that's because in the home there is no... And we do have women saying... Here we have final thoughts.
And it's not even close. Women are loved just for existing. They get attention, compliments, protection, free drinks, doors opened for them, etc. And a man, he's invisible until he proves that he can provide, protect, perform, pay, or add value. In other words, earn your spot or disappear. Guess what? A woman can also decide if you become a dad or not. You get zero say. She's pregnant, her body, her choice, my dudes. End of story. Do you want the kid? Doesn't matter. Don't want it? Doesn't matter. 18 years of child support slammed on you without consent. And worse, she cheats. She claims the kid is yours. You raise it for years and discover that it's not yours later. Court, in many places, still force you to pay until 18 years of age. So you're screwed. One day, she wakes up unhappy, files for divorce, no proof needed, and walks with primary custody most of the time, years of child support, and many times a lifetime of alimony plus half of your assets. Oh, and she isn't required to show you that the money is actually helping your kid. It all goes to her. She can also falsely accuse you with zero consequences. She can claim assault, abuse, rape, online to the police and in court. And if it's proven a total lie, she gets a little slap on the wrist. But you lose your job, your reputation, your sanity, and you can spend years in prison even if you're innocent. The system shields her more than the truth. Men are disposable, not women. Draft registration, men only. Most workplace deaths, men. Most homeless, men. Suicide rate 4 times higher, men. The double standards never end. Man hits a woman, monster. Jail. Woman hits a man. What did you do to her? Man cheats? You're trash. Woman cheats? She was just unhappy. He failed. The bottom line is, women get safety nets, sympathy, legal advantages, social worship, and endless help. Men don't. That is just the truth. Pretending that we're both equal is gaslighting half of the population. So wake up.
And that's where mgtow comes in, because mgtow are men who have woken up. But increasingly, in small numbers, yes, women are saying,
screw your feminism.
So there you have it. In a brief nutshell, the social cost to family. The economic cost is hard to measure with the job losses, the loss of productivity, the wasteful transfer of wealth to fund. And of course, people may say, oh yes, but they still, it doesn't matter who spends the money. Wrong. Because women spend the money on imported luxuries, so the wealth is actually leaving the country permanently. Now, yes, you can argue that electronics and other goods, again, that transfer of jobs away from men was not economic. It was political, right? To curry influence with other countries. It was never a deal. And if you, in economic sense, right? If you had a Ford plant and you needed a second plant, why would you close down the first plant? Wouldn't you just keep both plants? Why would you waste so much resources if it wasn't political? And don't forget the economic destruction. All this money going to the courts, right? To the government, right? For increased luxury. That's increased luxury for the few. That's increased wealth for the few. It's not a broad economy where lots of people are spending lots of money with lots of other people, right? So you have a decrease in wealth. You're spending money and earning less, right? Because the flow is only up. They increasingly buy up the homes. They turn them into apartments. Increasingly, women with their pension funds buy up all the properties. It's women who are driving up the cost of living, by the way. And yes, there are a few rare women who speak out. But it's slowly increasing. MGTOW is making a dent. Red Pill is making a dent. Doesn't matter, you can be Red Pill, you can be MGTOW and Red Pill, but primarily Red Pill, right? Not the manosphere itself. The manosphere has been politically ignored. It's the actual effect Red Pill is having on women that is producing the most panic. Because remember, feminism is the vehicle in which women advertise how psychotic they are and how they're willing to game the system in order to get ahead, which is exactly what the rich do. They use feminists to get ahead, and they reward a feminist with half their wealth when they retire, because it's the cost of doing business, right? You get, you come up with $1 million and get Mackenzie Bezos for 20 years, right? You come up with 20 million and get Melinda Gates for 20 years. Right? You come up with $1 million and you get Oprah for 6 months and she dumps you for a woman. Sorry, John, what's his name? John, right? John was John, right? And he spent, the next 18 or something years of his life hovering around her, trying to always please her, trying to get back in the good books. Man, that's some dog. That's a whipped dog. That's not a man. That's a whipped dog. John got John, right? Dump for a woman, right? That's what women do. Of course, they dump each other. They can't get along. Remember when women set up the feminist collective? How long? Where is it now? Can anybody point to its existence? Did it ever get off the ground? It's the same with remember the tribal land where the Indians were going to buy back Massachusetts or something. Where's that? Right? Now, I'm not saying they shouldn't, but, they always want, right, sympathy points, money. It's never to do with them. And, of course, the thing is, increasingly, right, with women spending money on perfumes and other stuff, because again, most of it is going overseas. These countries those countries do not have equal trade. It's been a one-way affair for a long time for most countries, right? And it's not improving the world. Now, but why? Because so much wealth is destroyed by women, right? They buy this expensive jewelry, right? And then the gold, these $5,000 necklaces, the gold, because they're valued at the price of gold by weight. But when you go to sell them, they're worth for half the price. So you lose money, right? And it's the same with all these gold bars. A huge drop, right? People buying all these gold bars, but then they started to do wealth transfers out of China and suddenly found all these gold bars were half the value. It's because they're overpriced, right? You're paying not just for the gold, you're paying a sales tax, a transfer fee, and of course you're actually physically relocating the gold, right? So, boom, you're losing. I think GDP doesn't count everything. It doesn't count the so if you counted everything, right? It's government spending, right? Proprietorship, that is the value of the value of ownership, is your asset value minus its liabilities, right? But increasingly, those asset values are hyperinflated. So when you go to sell them, you aren't getting $1 trillion for your Apple stock. You're getting half that if you're lucky, plus minus 30% for the withholding, and minus the transfer fees and legal fees. That's why your $1 million 401ks are always coming back short every time. That's the diminishing value, right? With Medicaid and all these other funds, is that as soon as the money sitting there doesn't increase in value, right? You have $100 for 20 years in the bank, but the buying power of that $100 is greatly diminished. Inflation is the hidden tax, and it's created to allegedly expand the economy, right? But increasingly, women are destroying wealth, right? They buy a home and they literally do nothing with it. So it loses value. It's not productive. There's no one renting or no one living. They've got these big homes with hardly anybody in it. And they're sold for, and usually when they die, they're sold for less value and taxes and property taxes. It's so hard to explain the economic cost of feminism. I probably have to do this separately. But inflation is predominantly, and it's created to artificially pump up all these DEI jobs, all these government jobs, government debt. They're hoping that inflation will increase the value of physical assets, and when they're at their desperate most peak, the government will dump gold on the market, and that will really sink things. But yeah, they could really bring down the debt if they wanted to, but it'll ruin the gold market, the diamond, tin, you name it. Like over 26 markets would collapse if the government wasn't in debt. And that's silly, that's sick. It's a corrupt system. But again, it's all to pay for the cost of feminism, right? To have more judges, to have more politics. Because the more teachers and other government workers you have, they vote for the system, right? They vote for their jobs, not for society, for a better world. No, they vote to keep their jobs, and they don't care how much the debt goes up, as long as they get to keep their comfortable home. And of course, that's decreasing. So as society slowly crumbles, more and more women are going to turn away from feminism. But society's already crumbling. It's too late. You had to stop it 20 years ago. But some, like Trump, do think they can fix it. What do you think? Can we have a soft landing? Chinese have actually had multiple soft landings in the past, where they have dismantled the governments and the excessive institutions, closed brothels, that sort of thing. Yeah, China went through periods of hedonism, which were predominantly old women selling their daughters for prostitution, or which started with virgin auctions, and it just went downhill from there. So there's a lot of external things we can look at and say, yeah, if we did X, Y, and Z, but then you look at the inertia of the system, it's full of foreigners, right? Most Western governments, their governments are full of foreigners who are here to destroy us. They're controlled by foreign entities who know how to destroy civilization, because most countries have been through collapses of multiple civilizations, so they know the causes of it, and they're doing it deliberately. Whether it's drugs, feminism, or crime, it's all the same thing. They want to destroy society, and unless you defend it, we cannot legally defend it, so all we can do is educate you and bring you to the red pill, so that we can create safe communities, and defend ourselves once the government has disappeared, because it will, right? Once fit hits the shan, you know why the government wants Greenland. Stop pretending that it's for you, okay? It's the Great Retreat, okay? It's just like in was it the collapse in the Ming Dynasty? They fled to the upper Siberia. Great exodus of Chinese nobles, fleeing the Mongols. Because the Mongols didn't come down. They went around and came in from the west through Tibet. That's why China wants to protect its western flanks against invasion, instead of being nice to its neighbour. Anyhow, thank you all for watching. Please like, share and subscribe. Please support the channel and support me on Ko-Fi, Patreon, buy my books, buy my merch. All my links in the link tree, description below, in my profile, or scan the QR code on the screen. I appreciate each and every one of you. Look forward to seeing you again in the next video. And look forward to your comments. Tell me, what do you think? What social and economic costs to the family have I missed? Because most of them are insignificant, and I've only covered the most obvious and the most costly to society. But do you think there's anything else I missed that has cost us more than healthcare? Right, it's drained so many people of wealth and made all but a few extremely wealthy, and that wealth doesn't translate, it just accumulates. No, we do not live in a capitalist society. It is a crony socialist system. Bye for now.